Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Headbangers Closet. It's your pal Brett here. Appreciate everybody checking out the channel. For this video, I want to talk about my all-time favorite debuts from 80s hair band, glam bands. Hair band and glam band was not a term that was even really going around, as far as I can remember, in the 80s. I kind of grew up in the 80s, born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and you know, the hair bands, to me, they were all just metal bands. I mean, yeah, we had thrash bands that I kind of got into later in the 80s, but I always loved and still love all the 80s hair and glam bands. So I'm going to mention those terms a lot on this video, but just want kind of to, from what I remember at least, those terms really didn't come out until like the 90s. If I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Somebody will leave me a comment below. I'm sure if I'm wrong. But as far as I can remember, those terms to describe these bands never were around till was never around till the 90s. But you know, back in the day, I just called them metal. They were metal bands, hard rock and heavy metal bands. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that when I grew up in that era, and MTV played a huge part in that. You would see a video on MTV, and you would dig it and dig the band. You start buying the cassette tapes and the records and whatnot. And you know, MTV made these bands huge. I mean, every band that I'm going to talk about sold out arenas, you know, whether they kind of deserved to or not. They were all still on arenas. Even the kind of like that third and fourth tier, you know, 80s metal bands that might have come out later in the 80s, like Slaughter, you know, bands like that, you know, Firehouse, you know, those bands were selling out their venues and they were playing shows. Like, it was just absolutely huge back in those days. So these are going to be my all-time favorite 80s hair glam band debut records. And I still listen to all of these quite often to this day, and there's only one that I'm not going to show. So I got a couple rules. I got to have it in my collection to show it. And I do not have Dawkins Breaking the Chains in my collection. I just never bought that album on cassette or record, which is kind of weird. I've got multiple copies of everything else they've done in the 80s, just not that one. And I cannot find my Twisted Sister Under the Blade album. I've got everything. In fact, I can't find any of my Twisted Sister actual albums. They're probably in a box on the move still, which has been like a year and a half since I lived here. The only Twisted Sister album I can find was Stay Hungry and then a single for The Kids Are Back. But those aren't the debuts, so I'm not going to show them. So that's rule number one. Got to be my collection. And the next one is I'm not going to do Bon Jovi. I don't feel they belong in this category of metal bands. Yes, they were grouped into like the glam and hair band stuff, but I feel they were more rock. And I'm not going to include Guns N' Roses. I know they were like the biggest one of the era. They came out kind of later in the 80s, and even though they had the hair, they were sometimes grouped into that. I don't feel that they were a real hair glam band, so I'm not going to include them. And I'm not going to include my all-time favorite, Motley Crue. These are the guys that started it all for me when I first heard Shout at the Devil on the playground of my Catholic school when it came out. This is their debut, Too Fast for Love. OG copy of Too Fast for Love. I'm excited to say all these are going to be OG copies that I got back in the day at the record stores when I was growing up, you know, doing my little chores around the house and like cutting grass and raking leaves, shoveling snow to get money to buy all these records and the cassette tapes. I had to have each. The cassette tape went with me on a Walkman and it went in the car. But we had a record player at the house, and then I got a record player for my room, so I bought all the records to play there. But yeah, so I'm not going to include Motley Crue. They're my favorite, and I feel that outside of Guns N' Roses, they were the biggest ones in the scene. So going well past 3 minutes here, so let's get to it. Going to go in order of year release on these, but in no particular order, to be honest with you. We have got Wasp's debut album, came out in 1984. The big single from this album was I Want to Be Somebody, and I can't hear that song today without cranking it up. And really excited to go see them this November. I got tickets to see them play with Death Angel, another one of my favorite bands, playing here in Atlanta the night before Thanksgiving, and they're going to play this album in its entirety. Can't wait for that. But Wasp's debut album, it's awesome. And then the next one was Rats Out of the Cellar, also from 1984. And this was a huge one on MTV with videos for Round and Round and Back for More. And just like I Want to Be Somebody, I can't hear Round and Round without cranking the thing up. But both really cool videos, but my favorite video being Back for More because it had Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee from Motley Crue in the video. Moving along to 1986, you've got Cinderella's Night Songs. Huge videos from this were Night Songs, Shake Me, Somebody Save Me, and Nobody's Fool, with Shake Me being probably my favorite video from this album, and having the guys John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora in the video. But Night Songs, awesome. I kind of thought Cinderella at the time was musically was a cut above everybody else. Yeah, I mean, look at them. They were definitely deserving of being grouped into the glam and hair metal, you know, genre there into that grouping. But they sounded a little bit different. They were a little bit more heavier, a little bit more hard, bluesy, hard rock, in my opinion. Then they didn't have some of the traditional cookie cutter traits that some of these other hair bands had. And the next one is another one from 1986, Poison's debut, Look What the Cat Dragged In. Absolutely love this record. Huge MTV airplay. This thing had huge hits as well. You had Talk Dirty to Me, I Want Action, Cry Tough, and I Won't Forget You as the videos on MTV. Absolutely love this record, and the fun fact about this is, as it is one of my all-time favorite albums, for the longest time, even after seeing the videos, I thought they were chicks. Probably for like a year after I had the album, I thought they were chicks. And then moving along to the end of the 80s, 1989's Warrant's Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinkin' Rich. Awesome record here. These guys, the singles on MTV were Down Boys, which is my favorite song off the record. Sometimes She Cries, In Heaven, the huge ballad. You know, every hair band had to have the ballad. Put out the video, like the second or third video was the ballad. And I can recall when this thing came out, 89, I was what, like 12 or 13 maybe, and this thing came out, and I can recall going to an outdoor festival in Boston for the radio station there, and Warrant was playing. It was just a bunch of bands. I think like Trickster was there. I think the headliner was Tesla, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not a big fan of Tesla, but Warrant was there, and they played in the middle of the afternoon. And I remember after that show, the video for Heaven debuted, and that video was a lot of concert footage from them playing shows outside in the middle of the afternoon, and probably was filmed over the course of like a whole tour and then spliced together. But I always like to tell people that, like, I was at the show where they filmed part of that video. I probably wasn't, but that's just something I always said back in the day about that. But I love that album. And then last but not least, another 1989 gem, the debut record from Skid Row. The big songs off this were 18 Life, I Remember You, and Youth Gone Wild. 18 Life being my favorite one. Phenomenal album. And just like Cinderella that I mentioned earlier, these guys were a little bit a cut above everybody musicianship-wise as well. And that's why I'm going to pick this one as the best one. Just the musicianship of these guys. The vocals of Sebastian Bach were second to none. I don't think there was any other hair bands coming out in that time that the singer could sing like Sebastian could. I mean, he just so good. The band was so good. So the debut record from Skid Row came out in 1989. Is I think the best debut album from an 80s hair glam band. But my favorite of them is going to be Poison's Look What the Cat Dragged In. I just love this record from beginning to end. There's not a bad song on it. They're still one of my favorite bands. They're my second favorite 80s band next to Motley Crue. Second favorite 80s glam hair band next to Motley Crue. Absolutely phenomenal record. The whole thing kicks ass. Their best album in their discography, and I don't even think that's up for debate or a question. So let me know what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What's the best debut 80s hair band? What's your favorite debut 80s hair band, glam band? Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate everybody checking out the channel. Have a great weekend, and I'll have another video for you guys very soon. Cheers, everybody.